So your question at the bottom is why do Republicans want to limit access to voting? And is this a manifestation of democracy versus oligarchy?
Can I just want to
Sure,
put
sure.
in context? She's looking historically back at what was going on, and she makes it very clear from her perspective, the issue of the Civil War was the South trying to take over the government so that they could maintain slavery in the South and spread slavery to the West, because they sincerely thought that that was the best way to create a prosperous society. And I guess I don't really understand what Republicans want, except to stop Democrats, lower taxes, and undo everything that Democrats have done. They don't seem to have a positive. They don't seem to have a cause like, let's protect slavery. That was pretty clear, with the South and the Civil War. But what do conservatives want today? What is their motivation?
Steve, you got a.
Well, it might be a bit cynical, but it seems to me the first order of business is for them to stay in power. And to stay in power, they protect their donors and pass, or prevent legislation from passing that might hurt their donors, and maybe take some steps to pass some legislation that helps their donors. And, restricting voting, it's a numbers game. I don't think there's many Republicans as there are Democrats. So to win, they got to make it hard for Democrats. Traditionally, people who vote Democratic, make it hard for them to vote. Gerrymander things so that, when they do vote, they only get one representative instead of, as many as they should have based on population. And that goes back to what Richardson said in the book about the Western states joining in with the Southern states and having a disproportionate representation in the Senate, disproportionate based on population of those states. And I looked it up. Even today, Wyoming has fewer people than the District of Columbia, where I did live for a while and always kind of resented not having a congressperson or or a senator that represented the District of Columbia. So you got over 600,000 people in DC, and I think it was 585,000 people in Wyoming. How does that make sense?
Seems like to me that one of the things that's clear is that the Republicans post World War II began to think, well, how are we going to keep this all power on together and build it up without something? So that they said, well, let's see, the first thing we had to do was, this business about the education system having black people in it. Oh my, well, we got to do that, and that'll stir people up and that'll get them doing it. And that whole post Civil War, post World War II stuff, what I've been ranting on about, Michael knows how many times I've been ranting on about the Koch brothers, because they were doing it at that time, and they were there. You have your extractive industry, and they figured out that they could just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And honestly, I don't think there's like a positive philosophy at all in the Republican Party. They're solely interested in power. They solely all want to be oligarchs.
Say what? Say that again.
I said that I think the Republicans all want to be oligarchs.
Oh yeah.
That's how they want to think about the world, and whether or not, they put on the front because they realize that they have to do it, but they still fundamentally just want to be able to go out and buy themselves a congressman, or whatever it is that they need. But of course you can't.
Yeah, I find it kind of ironic, Stan, in responding to your question. I have to think about how that group of folks dealt with slaves. And I hate to say, Republicans were responsible for it all. It's not that simple. But if you look at what happened in the Jim Crow era, we told poor white people that, at least you're not black. You've got Okay. And implicit in that is the notion of the caste system,
Right.
that we all recognize that there are layers in the society, and they believe that themselves. They believe that there are structures, layers in the caste system here, and they believe, and I've heard Republicans say this, that they think that people should have to pass a test or meet certain basic requirements before they can be enfranchised in the vote. That not everybody should vote, and they honestly believe that, and they think it's a mistake to give the vote to everyone, and it's hypocritical. But it's at the heart of this is, I agree, Paul. They may want to be oligarchs, but what they want to be is on the top of the pyramid.
Sure, of
To
course.
the top of the pyramid, you have to construct the bottom of the pyramid. And so how can we have a pyramid if everyone's equal in the vote? It's contraindicated or contraindicated for them that you could have equality and hierarchy at the same time.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Stan.
I've taken notes, and I want to make sure I understood what everyone said, and then I want to ask questions. So both Steve and Paul talked about the idea of wanting to stay in power. And, it was clear to me, I'm thinking about what's going on today compared to what Richardson was saying about the Civil War. And by the way, I just want to say, the Republican Party of the Civil War and up to the end of Reconstruction was the Democratic Party of today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Radical Republicans were the Democrats of today.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how this whole thing is flipped.
Yeah.
When you think about it. But anyway, getting back to that they wanted power because they wanted to protect the institution of slavery, because they thought that was the way to create the best life for everybody. And they also, like Michael said, they believed that some people were born to be worker bees and some people were born to be king bees. And it's just intrinsic. It's a natural, if you look at nature, that's the way it is. They believe that. And so it doesn't make sense that everybody should get to vote, because not everybody is qualified to make these decisions. The oligarchs are they're the most likely to improve society. They're most likely to be creative. They're most likely to be inventive, et cetera, et cetera. And it's interesting. They have a trickle up theory. Remember, the trickle up. The products of the working man will be taken up into the oligarchs because they know best how to use them. They know best how to make use of these benefits or these materials, to create a better society. And you just trust us. We know best. And I want to say too, that part of me feels like, maybe should people have to have a test before they can vote? Because maybe I'm oligarchic in the sense that, some people are idiots when you think about their reasons for voting for somebody. When you hear them talk, they just, you've heard that, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you ever think that? I mean, I think to believe in absolute democracy requires an extreme faith in the the average man, the average person, the extreme faith that, and this was articulated somewhere. I can't remember where I read it, but the people that advocate democracy, they believe that give a person the freedom to make a choice, and they will make the right choice, because it's just natural that people do that. And give me an example today, I mean, so anyway, I still don't understand. I mean, it's clear that the Southern leaders wanted to protect slavery because it was in their economic interest, and they argued it was in everybody's interest. What do the Republicans want? What do they want to do with their power?
Well, they're already doing what they want to do. They want to keep on doing it.
That's not a reason to have power. Power for power's sake doesn't make any sense to me.
Sure it is.
The political leaders are beholden to their donors and trying to please their donors so they get more donations so they can stay in power. It's kind of a,
So by
and
donors, do you mean everybody, or you just mean the wealthy?
I mean, they're big donors, the
Yeah,
ones that
they're big.
the ones that have their ear, that can call them up and say, do this or do that.
Yeah.
And also, a politician is into politics because they want the affirmation that people have voted for me, and I'm important because they voted for me. They picked me. That's just part of their character. They want to be out there. They want to be seen. You know, they don't want to be a follower. They want to be, out front where that can happen. So from a couple of Republicans that I know personally, they can say what's going on here is capitalism is the best system we've ever come up with, because we will come up with new technologies, new ways to provide goods to people economically, things that people need at affordable prices. We should be free to make as much profit as we can, because that's going to be good. It does get back to the Reagan-esque trickle-down theory. But they can convince themselves that the way corporate CEOs are paid is fine, because they are maximizing profit for their shareholders. And if I'm a shareholder, I want my profits to be
Only
maximized.
20% of the American public have stocks,
right.
mutual funds.
Right. I own some stocks. I'm not a Republican, so there are people who own stocks who aren't Republicans. But this is part of the way they see the hierarchical game, that I need to be successful. I need to take the next step. I need to make more money. I need to have, what comes with that money. And yeah, I don't think it's for the good of all anymore, even though they can convince themselves that it is. I don't see the approach for the good of all. Now, when I do look at America compared to other countries around the world, I have to say there's something that we got out of the standard of living. Post World War II, standard of living has risen a lot. It may have kind of reached its maximum in the last couple of decades, but there was a time when things weren't as good as they are now, and it's gotten to be a pretty good system for a very large number of people. Now, of course, there's always the 10 to 15% in poverty that is really not a good system at all. And there's the lower end of the working class that are very disgruntled because they can't really get ahead.
Yeah. Well,
so,
that's a good point. I've heard this said by many. I think Reagan may have said this explicitly, but if you compare what poverty means today with what it meant 100 years ago, these are two different things. You hear people, or you get an interview with someone in the gas station complaining about the price of gasoline as they're filling up their $40,000 car.
F-150.
You're complaining about a minor rise in the cost of gasoline, but you have a $40,000 car, for God's sake. What is it that you expect everyone to have? And I think Stan, at the heart of this is this conflict between the notion of the collective good and the individual good, that we may tend to see this in terms of what is most beneficial for most folks, and not what is the absolute ideal. It's you're never, it's in most fields of endeavor, there's not one solution that fits everybody.
Right.
Some people are going to do well, some people are going to not so well under any set of rules.
Yeah.
And the argument from the right is we've been successful, and you're asking, what does the Republican side have, or what's their goal? They ask the same thing. What is it that you want to do? You want everybody to be equal? Ayn Rand wrote about uh, penalizing people in order to make, raise the bottom by lowering the top. And there are, that was anathema to them. And that's that, people like Rand Paul still follow that same philosophy, that you can't penalize somebody for being a high achiever. That's what makes the thing work, is that you get people who are, the fact that somebody can be very wealthy inspires others to raise their own standard.
Right.
Do you have
I don't know. Paul, you want to say something before I start spouting off again?
Well, I thought about this. I think about this a lot, because you have, there's a limited amount of resources to exploit to be rich and fabulous. You just, we don't have, we think, oh, it just endless, it can't go on forever. And and I know that if we were to say you could right when you snap your fingers and all of the prices on stuff that you've been buying all your life suddenly was all equal, in the sense of it had, we didn't have any inflation during all that period. And see what you would get would be, a dollar would be this little bitty piece of money that we would have looked at it and said, that was a quarter back then. And so there's that whole question of measurement. And this is why the oligarchs and the people that work for them are all about making sure that the numbers all are out there in the proper kind of way, and that they control the numbers too. So, it's
what do you mean by numbers of what?
The dollars, the economics of the system.
Yeah.
Do I own, this is the thing. One time, not too long after Beth and I got married, she wanted me to, she had a document for some money that their grandfather had left her, and she wanted me to go to the bank and see what they, how they would handle that, and I went and I said, well, she was thinking about putting it into some kind of an account that weren't earning money. And the guy just laughed. It's $100,000. He just says, no, we don't deal with that small amount of money. And of course she said, well, yeah, we both thought, well, that used to be $100,000 was a lot of money.
It's still a good amount.
No, it's not.
They didn't have a CD to sell her, huh?
Yeah, at that point, back at that period, she would not do it. Her grandfather taught her to be very frugal, and she tends to keeping her dollars close at hand. Although she does.
CDs are very modest investment. They're guaranteed.
Yeah, well, she also has money with Coca-Cola. So she watches the stock market, Coca-Cola. Yeah. And she's every day she comes in and says, well, it hasn't done anything significant over the last couple of years. Prior to that, it did raise some cash, but that's all. It's just one more way. The boys that run the country do tend to be able to manage how the money is, how it's described and dispensed to all of the people that they think should have it. That's not including you and me, I think.
Stan, the question you were posing, did you get a satisfactory answer from each of us? We're talking about why do Republicans want to suppress the vote? And even Donald Trump said it. He said it out loud. He said, if everybody votes, we lose.
Right.
And so the demographics are there.
Yeah.
If
I understand.
Democrats vote, we'll win all the elections.
Yeah.
But
I just wanted to. I was going to say the way Stephen was describing Republicans, it sounded like the elite of the South in the Civil War, the oligarchs.
Absolutely. Yes.
It was the same thing.
When I read what you said about
instead of slavery, they want to support capitalism.
Yeah. When I read
ruthless, capitalism is a very general word, and there are different ways that capitalism can work, and capitalism can work for the greater good. But the way capitalism has been supported, and the way it's supported by Republicans, is predatory capitalism. And again, that belief that we know better, so give us the money, and we know how to help you with it. And it's interesting, I never realized this, but she makes the point about Lincoln's, all these, what was, creating a currency that took power away from these wildcat banks. The Homestead Act that gave people land so they could, you know, we were still an agrarian country then, and people still believed that the Jeffersonian ideal. There were several, and she makes the point that there were a number of laws that were passed that instead of giving the money to the oligarchs and letting them decide how it's going to benefit people, give the people something so they can benefit themselves. And I never thought of the land grant colleges to make education more accessible. You don't have to be the son of a Harvard graduate to go to college.
Right.
This was all attempts to empower people to help themselves. And if you go with the oligarchic model, they don't really do that. They help. I mean, how many fucking houses do you need? How many boats do you need? How many billions do you need? You know, it seems like, I mean, when you look at when the Republicans pass big tax breaks, most of it goes to the wealthy and the corporation. What do corporations do when they get a tax break? They buy back their shares to increase the value of their shares. So they're enriching themselves and their shareholders, which is a minority of the country.
Yeah,
so I'm seeing I guess for listening to you all helped me see the similarities between the and I think it's fair to say it's not slavery, it's capitalism that they want to today. Back then it was slavery, that was the economic engine that made them wealthy. Today it's capitalism that makes them wealthy, and it's a capitalism that where they get all the profits and they get to decide what to do with them. And if you're lucky, maybe you'll get a wage increase, you know, or maybe you'll get more health insurance or cheaper, you know. But on the most part, you don't get any of that, and that's why the government has to step in and provide it. And then, but the other part of this whole thing too is I understand why the big boys want to limit the vote, but how do they? And I think this will probably be explained as I read the book more. But how do they get the common guys to do this? The common men, the common people? How do they get people who don't have, as my father said, how does he put it? I don't have shit or a window to throw it out or something like that.
Pot to piss in or a window to throw it out.
Yeah. And these are a lot of these people, and they're supporting the oligarchs. And I think one answer to this, and I don't understand it fully, and I think one answer to this is they're sold on the idea that if you want to be free, you have to support us, right? That's the whole freedom thing, you know. And it's like what Michael said, you know, if you don't support us, then you won't be free to make $1 billion like we had. You know, that's the same idea. It's another example of freedom, and it's the way the oligarchs take. You know, it's either our way or you lose your freedom.
Well, I think in that case, it's not that they're making the appeal that oligarchy is good for you. They would never phrase it that way. What they do is say, these people want to kill babies. These people want all the foreigners to come over the border. These people want to give your hard-earned money away to somebody who's lazy. You know, they're not appealing to, you know, they're basically pulling a bait and switch. You know, it's we want to make sure that we protect the little guy, but this Social Security thing, and think of what you could do if you put your money in the stock market instead of Social Security, and they'll show you a chart that shows how much you could make. Yeah, well, right. That's not going to work. That's not the money.
What's happened since
play that money in there, it all goes up to the top.
Look what's happened since big companies done away with pensions. You know, and people don't,
but my point is, they're not selling a philosophy.
Right, I know they're selling
dividing and conquering.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, they are controlling the language.
Sure.
She talks about that. That's really the thing that matters. Is if you can decide how, you know, I mean, like 1984. Right? If you could be the one to control what somebody says is being true.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I mean,
Omar the other night had a section where he showed political ads. I don't know if you caught that or not, but
Oh, that's
he
good.
showed all the Republican ads, and one after another, they're saying, I'm a conservative. I'm the most conservative. I'm the biggest conservative. How many Democrats say I'm a liberal? Nobody.
That's because the Republicans have been successful of stigmatizing the word liberal.
Right. At one time,
Liberal means something
50s,
foolish.
back in the
something
50s,
cheap,
liberal was
something-
a good thing. You know, a liberal Republican, Rockefeller, you know, that was a good thing. But you're right, Stan, they've managed to control the language, and now liberal is negative, which means, you know, I've said this before, we need to be careful in controlling the language and get ahead of
Right.
this game. I don't know that the word progressive has now become damaged.
Yeah, laden with
So,
negative
I always
connotations.
consider it to be a very positive thing, but
Yeah.
now progressive, well, that's AOC and Bernie Sanders and all those crazy people, you know, so how can a Democrat claim to be a progressive? So what the hell are we as Democrats? Well, the only thing really is in the name itself. We believe in democracy, and the other side doesn't, and we need to start saying that. She points out the corruptive effects of oligarchies prior to the Civil War, and we know about the destructive effects of the oligarchs during the Gilded Age prior to Teddy Roosevelt and later FDR. We may be in a similar situation today. It's no secret that powerful businessmen are exercising significant influence on the political system. Powerful foundations and think tanks funded by Koch, Thiel, and many others not only construct the political messaging, but they actually write the laws for the politicians that they support. Dark money pervades the political system. Radical media, owned or supported by political partisans, amplifies fear and hostility through misinformation. Now, Richardson concludes her book on the hopeful note that the expanded presence of women and minority voting will moderate or even reverse the march toward authoritarianism. Do you agree with that, or will it take something else to rescue our democracy? Paul, what do you think? Will women and minorities, can they make a difference?
Well, they can make a difference, all right.
And they tip the scales, is what I'm saying.
They can tip the scale. It doesn't mean that they still need somebody within their ranks to organize and drive the politics instead of just waiting for somebody to come along and say, you know, I'll do this and vote for me. I mean, you know, what happened to, Michael, you've talked about this a whole lot. What happened to your local politicians who came around and if there was a meeting, they'd show up and talk about what they'd done and so on. And all of those, that stuff. I mean, I know a couple of people who are seriously into different kind of political stuff. And we know that person, one of course, Brad, but my friend Amy Geithner, who's fiery, just fired up all the time. And I mean, the women are going to be in the short term going to be extremely impactful on the economy. I mean, we're going to be looking at this, and the women in your life. I mean, they're going to be talking about those sorry sons of bitches took the Roe versus Wade down, and so now, you know, they're really screwing with us, and so, you know, why the Republicans don't jump on that, I don't know. You know, how do you make that into a political action that doesn't necessarily involve you as a man, but it certainly probably will some way or the other.
Steve, what do you think about women and minorities tipping the scales?
Yeah, I'm not sure if all on their own they'll tip the scale, but I think they're an important part of how things go. I'm not sure it's enough to tip, but I do think it'll help. You need that constituency, but you need more.
I can give you an example where women and minorities have made a difference, and that's they turned Georgia blue.
Mm-hmm.
Tracy Abrams and the new Georgia projects, you know, after she lost the last governor's race, she went to work, and she got other women and Black women to get out there and start voting and get other people to vote. So I think to the extent that, and I think the secret to changing things is to get more people to vote. And I think to the extent that the majority of people who aren't voting are women and minorities, then if we increase the women and minorities to vote, I think we'll see an expansion of opportunity and democracy that helps get, as Mr. Clinton said, a hand up, not a handout, right? I think we'll see a lot more of that. But the other thing is, women traditionally, women after the Civil War, women with the progressives, and then after the Civil War with the, not progressives, the populists, and after one of the major populist leaders in the late 19th century was a woman named Mary Kay Lease. And but anyway, they were but traditionally women were pushing to get have more say in the politics and stuff, and men just wait a minute, this ain't natural. But so what they did is say, well, you're important because your role is to provide a civil education for your children and to provide a support and comfort to the men in your life so that they can make these important decisions and fight these battles. So you're important. You're the hand that rocks the cradle, right? And I think where women making a difference are limited is this country by and large cannot imagine women in big leadership role. I mean, we do have women congresspersons and women senators, but we have a woman vice president. Look at she's a nullity. People just see her as like not doing anything, and the press on her is really negative. So I think women and minorities can make a difference at the lower levels if they turn out to vote. But I think if we're going to see real change, we need to see more women in higher office, and I don't know how that's going to happen because it's a big cultural shift for us. We cannot imagine. I mean, all these Western democracies have had women prime ministers and women leaders, and conservative and liberal both. Margaret Thatcher and the woman in New Zealand who, there's a mass shooting, and in 2 weeks she has all military style weapons banned, and they're powerful leaders. But this country, they just imagine a woman as president or a woman. We are seeing more women governors, but it's still, I think a lot of people have trouble with the idea of women in executive positions.
Oh, I agree. I think that is a huge hurdle to overcome. I don't know that a woman is any different from a man in terms of how they would perform in the office of congressman or senator or even president. I think they're going to be caught up in the same system, and gender really doesn't drive it. But you're right.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
There is that built-in prejudice, and the chauvinism that's lurking in the background. There are a lot of people who would not vote for a woman, just in the same way that many people would not vote for an African American because it doesn't matter who they are, and I'm not going to vote for them for that reason. But I'm hoping that women voting, whether they vote for other women or not, is not the issue, but women voting can help trip this. I'm hopeful that particularly suburban women will come out in large numbers, because I tend to think that women are more sensible than men. They're not driven by this drive for power, and and anything you say, like, there are exceptions all over the place, but
be careful, Michael.
I hope
You're safe here, but be careful.
Yeah, Well, to answer the question, is I think it could make a huge difference, but I'm not sure. I think if young people voted in large numbers, make a gigantic difference in the outcome. But the question is, how do you motivate?
Whatever group you're talking about, women, young people, minorities, they don't all vote the same. And if the Republicans can get out the women who are anti-abortion to vote and have that be their single issue, even though they're, nurturing and considerate of other people in other ways, they follow. What is it? It's a bait, I guess, that the Republicans put out there. We want to take care of your single issue, and then another bait for somebody else that we want to take care of your single issue.
Right.
And the people go with that, even though it might not be in their overall best interest or the best interest of their community or their country. Right. So that's why I'm a little hesitant on saying get women and minorities to vote. Okay, yes, they should vote. We want more people to vote, but we also want them to be able to vote based on good information, reasonable expectation that the person they're voting for is going to, do what they say they're going to do. And so I think it's a mixed bag.
Well, I think even if it's a male candidate, he's got to be able to address the issues that appeal particularly to women. I think Roe versus Wade is one of those, but there are a whole lot of others as well. I think, though, that the real tell here is articulating a vision. I said liberals won't call themselves liberal. Well, what are you going to call yourself? What is it that you're going to do? I think Obama did that. I don't know if it may have, a lot of it was hype, I suppose. I think Clinton did that. I know John Kennedy did that. All these Democrats who've won were able to articulate a vision that people could latch onto. The cliche is, Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line. We need to have somebody to fall in love with, and we're pretty obviously not in love with Joe Biden. I think we like him, but we're not inspired by him.
Right.
And I hope that we could come up with a candidate on the top who could do that, but also candidates in lower offices who could do the same thing, inspire people. I think Charles Bucker has done that in Kentucky. I don't know that he can beat Rand Paul, but he's got a very positive message, and that's what people respond to. That's why I supported Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders had a wonderful appeal to a whole lot of people who were turned off by politics altogether, but they heard him say things that they wanted to hear from someone. It was very hopeful and very forward-looking message. So I don't know if it's the women voting or the candidate they're voting for, but I'm convinced that we need to do something different. The game we're playing, we're losing.
Who is this guy you mentioned that is, I guess, going to be opposing Rand Paul for Senate?
Charles Booker.
Booker?
Yeah.
Who is he?
He's a state representative now. He is running against Rand Paul in the senatorial race this fall. And he's aggressive. Bernie Sanders endorses him. So it's, of course, Bernie's going to endorse the Democrat, I guess. But I think he can do well. The fact that he's African American is going to cause him probably to not carry Kentucky, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. We seem to have great candidates. Hillary Clinton, had she been male, would have been president now.
Yeah.
She lost because of her gender. We had if Pete Buttigieg was not gay, he'd be a runaway front runner for the next nomination. But there's always these caveats that they carry, and You know, we got to find. My money right now is on Jon Stewart. I think Jon Stewart would make a hell of a good president. We need somebody who can speak
Yeah,
and speak
he
with
is
force.
great. He's passionate. And
Yeah.
have you seen his program? What's the matter with Jon Stewart?
Yeah, yeah.
What's the matter with
He
Jon
was
Stewart?
speaking today in front of.
Oh, I saw it. I saw a clip.
Yeah.
He was powerful, really powerful.
Yeah.
So articulate. And he looked good in a t-shirt and a baseball cap. I'd have a beer with him. I'd sit down and have a beer with that man.
I have a couple.
You know, Steve, in response to your idea about, well, there's all these women, they go out and vote and they're conservative and they're against abortion, et cetera, et cetera. Well, two things, and I don't know, but I wonder statistically, if you look at, let's say, the last presidential election, which demographically, which groups turned out to vote? What percentage were young people? What percentage were women? What percentage were men, educated, college ed? All those different ways they break down the vote. It would be interesting to see that. And I think in terms of, I would say, again, I don't know for sure. Statistics go in one ear and out the other. But I think if you looked it up, I think you'd see that the majority of women in this country are against abortion laws. They want to see women have the freedom to choose, and not all of them see how all the drastic. I mean, there's all these drastic things that it's not a matter of babies and heartbeats. It has a lot. It has a lot to do with women's health and et cetera, et cetera. But I think if you look, if more women turn out to vote, I think there's going to be more women that want to vote for choice than women who want to vote against choice. I think I don't. But I think you see that. So I think yeah. If more women turn out, you're going to get some that are going to go, this and that. But I think if more women turn out, more of them are going to be against the abortion bans.
No, I didn't use that. I just use that as a subset of how some women could be peeled off to vote Republican because of that issue. You could also peel off women to vote Republican because of economics. Or because of them being associated with the U.S. military, a conservative organization, or so there's many ways that you could peel off sections of women as a voting bloc. That was my point. Not that the single abortion issue would sway that many women, but the ones that it sways, they're going to vote Republican.
Yeah, right.
I think
I was thinking there is a question that maybe that relates to what Richardson has written. When you think about the previous discussions we had about the self-reliance of the Western cowboy, and that thought that is uppermost, that we compete, we're self-reliant, we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and everybody else should do the same. That maybe is on one side of a spectrum, and on the other side of the spectrum are people who have empathy for others, who have worse problems that they're facing than we do. So sort of which is the American spirit? The self-reliant, everybody's in it, taking care of themselves, or we have empathy for other people and we see people who have worse than we do and we try to do something to help.
Oh, you had something.
Mutually exclusive?
No, I think both can happen, but sometimes people who choose one path or the other exclude, right? If you're bringing them up by the bootstraps, then you don't care about, the people on the other side of town who live in poverty. And you don't want to have any programs, any of your tax dollars go over to help people that you consider, haven't pulled themselves up out of poverty. So,
I think just as a small aside, it probably won't really matter much, but I find this interesting to consider it, that one of the more interesting get people who will be drawing in new voters is Pete Buttigieg, because the man speaks 8 languages.
Mhm.
Okay, so all of the people that you know, whatever they are, I don't even know, but I mean, you know, nothing like having a candidate who speaks your language. You know, that's going to distract a whole lot of folks, and there's a significant number of people who are here who don't speak English, don't speak it very well. And so, you know, I mean, I like Pete a lot. You know, it's like, yes, we got to get him in there somewhere to help us carry the ball.
Well, that may be another way of looking at politics, Paul, is, you know, if you look at John Kennedy and Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, these Democratic presidents, all of them were very highly educated, I would say brilliant people. I mean, Jimmy Carter was a nuclear scientist. You know, these folks they were smart and they could speak. And I think that's what Buttigieg brings to the table. I hope that we're open-minded enough collectively not to let his sexual orientation determine his fitness for office. I hope that's true. And maybe he can be the first gay president, the way Obama was the first Black president, and you know, break that barrier down. You know, I'm hopeful that way, but I don't know.
Not gonna win over the evangelical right.
No.
Because that's a sin. That's an abomination.
Right. Not well.
But that's a minority of people, and that.
Well, he's not going to win over the Black vote either.
That's true.
The churches are very influential, and they're not going to stand for that either.
They're not going to support.
That's why I think
they have that same conservative attitude towards.
Yeah, I think it's a shame.